An investigation by the Justice Department has found that Yale University illegally discriminated against Asian American and white students who were applying to the school. The department found that race is the, quote, determinative factor in hundreds of admissions decisions each year. The Supreme Court has ruled that universities may consider race in admissions, but must do so in a narrow, tailored way to promote diversity. And here now to help us understand more is Mike Gonzalez. He is the senior fellow at the Douglas and Sarah Allison Center for Foreign Policy at the Heritage Foundation. He's also the author of a new book, The Plot to Change America: How Identity Politics is Dividing the Land of the Free. Mike, thanks for joining us today. The Justice Department says that Yale must agree in the next 2 weeks to change its admissions process. The president of the university so far is saying the school will not change. Where do you see all this headed?
Well, I'm afraid it might have to be the courts. There's a Harvard case also having to do with Asian Americans that is also headed for the courts. I think eventually the Supreme Court will have to strike down all matters of racial preferences, not just in university admissions, but in contracting, in hiring, in housing, in everything. What we have seen over the last 3 or 4 decades is the emergence of a rival constitution that is at variance with the Constitution of 1787, which and the ideas of equal protection under the law. So this is going to have to be resolved by the courts, unless Yale, even if Yale agrees, the Harvard case will eventually end up in the courts as well.
Do you think a lot of schools are operating in a similar fashion to Yale and making race the determinative factor in admission decisions, or is Yale more of an outlier?
I think all of society is. I think especially in the summer of 2020, we've had a real revolt here in terms of what the media has chosen to show us. Obviously, the very tragic death of George Floyd has touched off protests and riots, many of which were orchestrated, and our leaders are desperate to show good faith and good intentions. And so I think that the Justice Department, by taking a step against this idea that we have to make all decisions in life with regards by weighing race, is something that is going to have to eventually end up in the courts. We at the United States cannot continue like this. These things are unconstitutional. The reason I wrote my book, The Plot to Change America, is precisely because of this. There's one quote by Assistant Attorney General Eric Dryband last week when he says, "Unlawfully dividing Americans into racial and ethnic blocks foster stereotypes, bitterness, and divisions." That is, Dryband has it exactly right, and that is the reason I wrote my book, The Plot to Change America.
Yeah, so it's so fascinating because, of course, you can say everyone in this country wants everyone to have equal treatment. And so if the way we have been doing it is not working, what do you think is the best way? And specifically with regards to admissions processes, how can colleges do it better?
Well, the law, or any entity that uses taxpayer money, that is practically every university in the country, has to give us equal treatment, has to treat every American equally, has to be colorblind. That's what the Constitution and the 14th Amendment called for. That is what Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act calls for. We have done the opposite. Soon after ending legal segregation and legal discrimination and flagrant segregation during the Civil Rights Movement, we moved right away into doing the opposite, into doing the same thing, actually, again, using race as a factor in decisions in everyday life. This should be found illegal by the Supreme Court.
Well, it is really fascinating, and I know it's going to be a long time trying to make this right, but for now, thank you for your insights, Mike Gonzalez.
Thank you very much.